Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Lance Neighborhood Livability Association meeting for October. I'd like to remind everyone, please silence your phones. If you don't know how to do that, turn them off, please. Thank you. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Betsy Johnson.
Whoops, Betsy's got to silence her phone. I don't want to be a guest in your house and break the rules. Well, I don't need that.
You sure?
So thank you again for letting me come out here. I have been out on several occasions, and Shar and I have been working for a long time to ask TriMet and the city to come out and visit with you guys and talk about this stock that has been so difficult for you to access. And so tonight, instead of just speculating, we've got experts from TriMet. We're going to hear from Mr. Wilson, who's their Executive Director of Safety and Security first. His son is getting an award tonight, and we need to hear from him. He'll do his presentation. Then we'll do a Q&A with TriMet, and he's leaving some of his folks behind, but he's going to go cheer for his kid, which he should do. And then the city is just a little ways away, and we'll hear from the city. So, Mr. Wilson, come on out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So appreciate you guys letting me be a little flexible tonight. I do have a kid that's, thank you. And I appreciate this group and just being together today. While I am going to scoot a little early, I'm always available for questions. I'm happy to come back out. I think Pat Williams has been out before. You guys might remember. Pat works for me. He's my Director of Security. Great long-time law enforcement professional, former lieutenant at the Gresham Police Department. I actually live in Gresham as well. So, before we get started, I kind of want to acknowledge an incident that happened back on September the 2nd. Really terrible outcome for us. We had a bias attack against two young men on the TriMet MAX near the Flavel station. I'm sure you remember September the 2nd. Really terrible outcome for us, the community. Our heart goes out to these two young men and their families. This is about the worst thing that could happen at TriMet. We really try to limit that type of thing, obviously, with increased presence, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit, some of the things that we work on. But just want to say that hate has absolutely no place at TriMet or in our community, and we stand with those families. Thankfully, those young men are going to make full recoveries. In that particular case, that individual was thankfully arrested pretty quickly thereafter. But I will say, and I think you might have read this in the paper, that individual had other violent incidents in our community for the preceding months. And unfortunately, was not held accountable for those, was not held at all in some cases. And I think that's something for us to think about as community members, about how we address crimes like those and hold people accountable sooner so that we can't have those types of incidents on our train or in our community or convenience stores, wherever. So that's one thing I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight as well. I will say, you may have noticed this, but TriMet has made very significant increases related to security over the last few years. We've doubled our safety and security budget since 2020. We've doubled the amount of personnel, security personnel on the system since last year. So we have now over 315 security personnel working in our department on the trains and on the buses and on our platforms. That's a pretty big number, and it represents a pretty big investment. I hope you're seeing it out there. You will start to see. I see one hand. That's good. I got one hand. But it's important to us. We have to create a safe environment for our riders and our employees, and so that's an investment that we continue to make. We'll continue to see those numbers increase. We have several different types of teams out on the system right now, and that's by design. I will say that TriMet totally supports a sort of health-centered approach to substance abuse disorders. You might see some of our safety response team out there. That's a team that we grew from 8 in 2021, 8 personnel, to 60 now that are out there. These are folks that are similar to Portland Street Response. They do outreach services. They have Narcan, they have water, they have socks, they have first aid training, they have de-escalation training. And so they're really really trying to reach some of the most vulnerable folks that are out there in the system that either have mental health disorders or serious substance abuse disorders. So we do have those capabilities out there now. We also have a lot of contract security personnel. You'll see them. From a transit police perspective, we used to have as many as 65 transit police out on the system. Right now, we're just under 20. And that has been that way since just before the pandemic. So we've really lost a lot of our transit police. Now, I say that, don't think that if you're on the MAX train, you call 911, it's only transit police that are going to respond. Portland Police, Washington County, wherever you are, you're just like any other citizen, so you're going to get a police response. But the fact that we have such low numbers in transit police is not a great outcome for us. So we really need the agencies to grow healthy numbers so that we can get those folks back into transit police to be able to have some of those good outcomes that we've had in the past as well. And so we're working on that every single day. But one thing that we have now that we've never had before is just such a robust security personnel out there as well. So that you will start to see that. You will see more code enforcement, more fair enforcement activities. And that's by design. It's part of the strategy that we're sort of going after. I will say that we have some challenges and some limitations at TriMet. What's going on in the community affects ridership, affects how your ride is experienced, affects the platforms, even at Flavel. And we are engaged with partners as much as we possibly can be to try to create better outcomes in the communities as well. You might have heard of the Central City Task Force that Governor Kotek has set up. I and another executive member actually are on subcommittees. I'm on the substance abuse subcommittee, and a peer of mine is on the livability subcommittee. Actually, I have a meeting on that tomorrow morning. So we're working together with others in the community at the state and regional level to try to impact some of these things. What really is affecting us, and you'll see this in your community, is that kind of trifecta of houselessness, drug addiction, mental health. Those three things are just at real epidemic levels at times. And so, we only have so much ability to address those as a transit operator in the area, but what we can do is really increase our capabilities with security with our safety response team, which I mentioned, and with just working with regional partners. TriMet's at the table to try to create better outcomes as much as we possibly can be. I will say, there's some things out there right now that I think that nobody could have anticipated even 5 years ago. We have been very robust in our response, I think pretty proactive. When I mentioned that 315 personnel, that is going to increase. We're continuing to add personnel daily, and it's very important to us to do so because we need that presence out there to create better outcomes for you guys as riders and in the community. So that's something that we're totally attached to, and we're going to continue to be a part of these community group sessions to try to create better outcomes. I really appreciate Betsy pulling us together tonight to have a good conversation. And with that, I'd probably just open it up for questions from you. I don't want to do all the talking, so Betsy.
I'll ask one on behalf of the community, and I have to say, for those of you that I haven't met, I don't live out here. I came out here the first time when I ran for governor, and Shar called me afterwards and said, "You loved us when you wanted our votes. Do you still love us?" And so I've kept coming back. And the answer is yes.
Great.
So I'm going to ask the question I think is on everybody's mind. What can happen to remediate this stop? This has been a constant. And 311 was out here and talked about how you call 311 and it'll fix it. I know we've just been joined by our friends from the city, but these guys want to know what fixes this.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. If you look at what's actually on the screen, some of this area is obviously not ours to be able to address, but the stop itself, even before the September 2nd attack, but particularly after, you're going to notice a heavier presence of security on the platform. When we talk about drug use and drug disorders, we have folks that OD on our platforms, they OD off our platforms. These are not necessarily transit riders, some of them are, but they come onto the platform because it's a flat place and you might have a little shelter to smoke fentanyl, essentially, right? So we try to limit that at that platform because we got to get people feeling safe to just get to the platform and catch a train. So that's our primary focus. It's not so much the area around, but I will say that what's happening in the area around that station actually does get onto our platform. That's why it's so important for us to have security personnel out there. So from that standpoint, I'm not trying to answer your question, but what we can control is really the platform area, the TriMet property, and we're somewhat more limited on the outside space. But that's why it's so important that we have good coordinative meetings with the city, East Police, East Precinct, and that sort of thing. Did I see it?
Yeah, don't you try to talk to the agencies that are responsible
That's a great
for
question. Yeah.
around your platform?
Yes, and we do. And I don't want you to think we don't. And I say that because we're a big player in this region. The region, the health of the region for our ridership, and that's one of our primary goals, is to continue to build back our ridership post-COVID. Absolutely essential that that area is healthy, and so we're trying. But I'm just saying we can't go and evict people off our station, that sort of thing. I think you guys understand that. Yeah.
We have fences along our property. Some of them are TriMet fences, some of them are our fences. And we're having difficulty, the homeless population constantly cut through it. They use our facility as a toilet. And
They break into the units.
they break into the back of our units. I mean, we do our best to try and take care of this, but we cannot do it all. We're only 2 people on a whole property. Then we had a fire back there, called the fire department, or called 911. I ended up hanging up on them. She ended up, they called back, she took the call. I was sitting there, I had nothing to put this fire out with. I was doing the best I could. I grabbed whatever was on our cart to pull the stuff away so it didn't catch fire, because we had a big fire back there not too long ago. It's like, I mean, what are we expected to do? What can we do? I am so frustrated with this city and everything about it, because we are trying our best to make a good piece of property, make it livable, make it nice, and this is a constant thing, and it's like we cannot get answers from anybody, and then we've got them camping right on 92nd. We call, she calls and calls and calls and calls and calls. Well, sorry, we got to put you on hold. We'll take your information. Nothing happens. It takes a long time for something to happen. And then they're throwing everything over our fences, and we have to go back and clean it up. We're spending more time cleaning up their messes than we are doing our work. And we get in trouble for not doing our work because we're doing their work. Whoever else's work.
Yeah, I hear it. I mean,
it's a frustration.
Yeah.
What can we do? What can we do?
So
What can be done?
I hear you, and I'd say a couple things come to mind. Number one, if it's a TriMet fence, we want to know about it. I have some business cards. You probably heard from Pat, but we do consistently. We're out repairing fences, and that's not just because of those types of incidents. It's also because we've got to protect folks from getting on our right-of-way and having a terrible outcome when they get hit by a train, which does happen.
Yeah.
And when you have those kinds of outcomes, you think, this is the individual who's lost their life. Well, now you've also got an operator who now has struck somebody, and the rest of their life will think about that.
Exactly.
And the community,
Exactly.
and the family that's lost a member. And so those kind of outcomes, good fences, we spend a lot of money on fences.
Yeah.
And we're actually upgrading some of our fences at some of our higher profile areas. We bought some of the best, fences around. Unfortunately, we're seeing some of those cut now because people have so much time that they can spend out there. And I say that because, I don't want you to think that we don't repair fences. If it's a TriMet fence, we will repair that fence.
So let me ask you this,
Yeah.
the bike trail, the
Right.
is that fence, TriMet fence?
Part of that is, yes. And so
Because
we
I was
repair
told
that.
it was, And I
Yeah.
called and trying to say,
Yeah.
oh no, it's not our fence, it's PBOT, so I called PBOT, no,
Yeah.
no, that's ODOT. Oh no, that's this one.
Yeah, it's a
Nobody
frustration.
knows.
No one will take responsibility.
Exactly.
We will get you a map. Let's do that, Tom. I would love to do that. And I will not just get you a map for TriMet. I will show you everybody that owns those fence sets. because we can-
Let me just add too, that when Mr. Wilson leaves, and we ought to encourage him to go see his kid get an award.
Yeah.
He's leaving behind two of his folks, Tom Markroft, who I've known for, 25 years,
And cars.
and Card, and Miles, wherever the hell you are, Miles back there. So there will be the opportunity to talk to them even after Mr. Wilson leaves. The other thing is that we'll hear from the city in a few minutes, and maybe we can then visit, after you've heard the city's perspective on this, visit and talk about the possibility, and I'm just making this up, of a saturation patrol out there for a little while. Or what other things might be in the realm of the doable. Could they have an officer stationed there for some period of
You
time?
need more than one.
Well, one would
take one for now.
One would be a great
We'll take one,
start.
yeah.
Let me add a little bit, because I heard the frustration, and I'll just say, TriMet's frustrated. We have outcomes that's spilling onto our trains
I
that we're,
totally understand.
You know what I mean.
understand where you guys are coming from.
Yeah.
too.
I mean,
And these people are like, they've taken over the whole cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And I know these people are drug dealers. I know they
They're
are.
the same ones that.
They're the same ones.
So I was going to head that direction, which
Yeah.
is, there's some new activity related to down in Salem, related to Measure 110, looking at that. Obviously, we would advocate looking at that again from a transit agency perspective to see if that's the right approach, looking at reform options there. The level of drug addiction on the street right now is really spilling off into all of our communities. We've seen it, and it affects us at TriMet, it affects that station. And so when I'm thinking about the true solution to how you don't have these fires and everything else, we've got to figure out a way to get drug addiction at these rates off of the streets. And so that's a society.
Why is it that Seattle and San Francisco, I've ridden the rail there recently.
Yeah.
Why do they not have these people like walking down the aisle like looking for people to like mess with?
Well, it's interesting. So I travel a lot. I've been on LA Metro. I was actually on a task force to help LA Metro with some of their outcomes. When you go travel, sometimes you have a good experience. And I say that because I hear the exact opposite. Sometimes they travel to our system. They say, "What are you guys doing so well up there?" And we're like, "Man, we got problems up
No,
here."
I ride the train a lot,
So-
and I rode the MAX almost every day.
Yeah.
And
I think that might be the difference.
it's by far the most unsafe thing of any train I've ever ridden.
Well,
Just hands down.
yeah.
Mr. Wilson, while you're still here, I'm part of a group that's working on reforming ballot measure 110. It's the DA in Washington County. It's a guy named Max Williams who ran corrections for Governor Kulongoski for 8 years, and many others.
Yeah.
The first meeting of the task force is going to be next week. And what I'd like to ask you is, would you be willing as TriMet to come down and testify in front of that committee?
Absolutely.
Because, thank you, we are asking the legislature to act on some specific recommendations that our little committee is making. And if they are unwilling or unable to do so, then it is our intention to take it to the ballot, and we're raising money to do that. I would prefer that the legislature step up and responsibly act on behalf of all of you that are this frustrated. And to have TriMet come down and testify, and to have you guys all work on your own legislators is going to be incredibly important. But thank you for saying you'd come down and testify.
Yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
big deal.
And we've been down there before. We were down there actually with Chariots, Lane Transit, some of the other mass transit in the state of Oregon. Down there, what was it, last year, Miles and team. And we talked about our experience, talked about what was happening to mass transit with some of these outcomes. And so we'll do it again, Betsy, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't drag
Mr. Wilson, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
This might not be a question or statement for you, but these ladies are asking what they can do to stop something that's absolutely unacceptable that's been happening far before Measure 10 in their area. My question to you is, what kind of dialogue pressure are you putting on PBOT and ODOT to clean up their areas, their properties, so that you can successfully run your transit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, this is why we talk about the importance of community organization and us applying pressure and just having good conversations with state and regional leaders to try to clean up some of these issues that are affecting us as well. We do have some good partnerships that are getting re-strengthened, I think, after COVID. And I think it's really important that we're at the table. We've had these conversations at the executive level at TriMet, trying to produce better outcomes in our community, because we're dependent on our community and they're dependent on us. And so I would just say that is going to be an ongoing effort. Some of these issues that we're facing right now are not things that are going to be easy fixes. This is going to be a multi-year effort. We're going to have to work very hard together and in unison to try to clean up some of these issues. So I don't want to minimize it and say if we have a good meeting with PBOT, that's going to create the outcome we all want. We're going to have lots of meetings with PBOT and lots of meetings with the city.
What's happening with ODOT and PBOT is completely irresponsible. And can you hold them to account with lawsuits or with fines or some way of holding them accountable for hurting your business that is a public interest?
Well, we try to be a good partner, so we will continue to work to identify solutions alongside them. I would say you as citizens can voice your concerns, voice your frustrations. I think that's probably going to be the best way to get some of these things addressed. But we'll continue to work with them, and we continue to provide a particular perspective as a mass transit operator, which I think is really helpful to identify some of those solutions. But I just don't want to minimize it. I really appreciate you all getting together and having a conversation today. We're going to have to do this across our communities more and more and more, and it's going to be a lot of work, to be honest. It's going to be a lot of work.
Mr. Wilson, out of here.
All right, thank you.
Go clap for your friends. Thank you. We're going to move to the city now. We have been joined by Dakotah Thompson, who is the Deputy Director of Community Safety for Mayor Wheeler, and Skylar Brocker-Knapp, who is a Senior Policy Advisor. And if you guys want to come up and make your presentation, and then we can do a more generalized Q&A. Tom and Miles are staying behind. We just needed Ed to be able to go congratulate his son. Thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening. Sorry, I was distracted by the photos. I'm trying to make sure I know which bridge that is. So, I'm Dakotah Thompson. I'm the Deputy Director of Community Safety for the Mayor's Office. I'm also probably just loud enough for you to hear me, but whatever makes everyone leave here. So, like I said, I'm the Deputy Director of Community Safety for the Mayor's Office. I wear another hat. That's the Public Environmental Management Office. So, that was created by the Mayor to address the trash and graffiti. And it was set aside a budget to do just that. Pay contractors to go clean graffiti, pay contractors to pick up trash. While it's certainly not enough, it has been effective, especially like Central East Side, we saw it work, that model. We removed about 17,000 square feet of graffiti. And so that project speaks not to a police response or the typical enforcement response and talking about safety. It's about that kind of, do you feel comfortable walking around? Is it clean? And obviously, for many people, the answer is no. For most people. For many people, most, I heard someone say, the answer is no. And so we're going to continue that work and continue to invest in just that part. But what I was asked to come talk about was the law enforcement side of that equation. So I pulled it up as I heard you guys talking about it, and I wanted to have the most recent data. You can always go to the portland.org and look up how many sworn officers we have, what our capacity is. We have 297 patrol officers right now for the entire city. That's what we've got. That's obviously too few. So the mayor's response has been to hire 300 officers. In the 3 years, we're at about 150 new hires. When we started that project, we realized it's taking too long for them to get through the state agency that certifies them. So we lobbied and talked to the legislator about, help us out in that space. We need to be able to get these officers onto the street far more quickly than what the standard timeline was going to look like. That was successful. Those class sizes have been doubled. We're getting access to those class sizes. So that means that we're going to have more new officers on the street at a quicker pace than we otherwise would have been able to without that partnership with the legislator and getting DPSST, which is the state agency I'm referencing for training. They're the ones who control it. They've given us more space, double, so that we can get those officers out. So we recognize the need for more officers. That is part of the reason we talked to, the task force, the governor's task force. We wanted OSP, the Oregon State Patrol, to come help us. We asked for 96 officers. Obviously, that's a big number for what is the total number of OSP in the state. But we know we need the help, so we asked for a big number because we know we need it. As of right now, we've got at least 10 OSP officers helping us downtown, so part of that request has already been met, and we want to build on that model and get that help. So that you have officers, someone was talking about a walking beat earlier, so that you have officers that you see out helping prevent the crime that's making your lives miserable by being that presence. We don't always want to be reacting, and part of the way to not have to react to it is just to have them there in the first place, so that the criminal behavior is deterred, right? That's generally where we are with the law enforcement side of this. We are continuing to partner with other agencies, our federal partners, for drug enforcement, because that's a big problem. One city can't arrest every drug dealer, and it's not originating in Oregon. I think everybody can appreciate that. So we work with them to make sure that our arrests and the prosecutions and all of that is as effective as is possible. Meaning how many drugs are seized, what they're being charged with in terms of distribution and drug dealing, that sort of thing. And those partnerships are effective. It's not enough, again, but that is something we continue to do to partner with them, all of our DEA, Homeland, all of it, so that the minimum amount of officers we have, we're kind of doing a force multiplier to make sure that we're doing as much as we can with the resources that are not enough. And I'm sure you have specific questions, but the law enforcement is not the only way to handle it, and we don't think it is. Part of our response is asking and trying to set up programs that interdict the violence. So Cure Violence, Ceasefire Project. These are programs that go out with community-based organizations to try and interact with the people who are at the highest risk of becoming victims and perpetrators of this type of violence and get in the way of it before it ever happens. So the city is investing on both ends of that spectrum, both of the law enforcement response and hopefully before it ever happens. That's the idea, because it's obviously better if it never happens in the first place. I'm sure you have specific questions about specific events, and I'm happy to try and answer those, but I think that's a general overview of how we're approaching the situation. We're not just focusing on law enforcement, but we're investing a great deal into that. We're also focusing on the stuff before it becomes a problem side of the work. She beat you to it.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I was told by a police officer that East Precinct takes more calls than all other precincts combined. Why were they the first ones to get body cameras?
I don't know why the correlation between the most calls would necessarily connect them to getting the most body cameras, so if you could flesh that out for it. But the body camera pilot was about making sure we had a small pilot to make it work and work out the kinks. That was a long time coming, and I don't think I have a good answer for that. We chose a unit that has a lot of interaction downtown, and we just went that direction.
I hear you saying downtown, downtown, downtown. The problem is not downtown all, completely. It is out here. It is in Southeast Portland. It's in Northeast Portland. It's all over. Mm-hmm. And it's like, even the news media promotes the downtown part. I don't, and we see that part, I see that, and I'm thinking, what about the rest of the city? This is a big city anymore. This is not a tiny city anymore. This is a huge city.
Yeah, everything is focused on downtown.
And because I wouldn't walk downtown. I used to love to go downtown. I would not go downtown. No way.
Part of the answer to that not really a question, but a very, very heard, and we recognize what you're saying. The mayor created problem solving.
Mind you though, I was born and raised in this state, in this city. And it hurts my heart. And I am telling you, I'm telling everybody, it hurts my heart to see this city a dump.
This is justifiable.
It is a dump.
This is justifiable rage.
And I'm ashamed to even say I live here.
But it's not just downtown, like Flavel is really bad. Like,
Exactly,
where you can
exactly.
sit in-
What about Monoma County?
Yeah,
too?
it's the
Because
whole
Monoma County,
city.
the neighborhood.
Keep raising your
It's
name.
really,
So I'm gonna, real quick,
only
because
hear
this
about
is.
downtown, but not hear about the.
we
All right, so
wanna hear
we're gonna do one question at a time to make sure that we're not ignoring people, okay? Real quick, in response to what, part of our response is the problem solving meetings. We have one for Lents, where every 2 weeks, city staff, I'm part of it, we show up, and effectively, you get to come tell us what's wrong right here. Not downtown, not in Northwest, not in North, what's wrong right here? What do you need the city to come address? Be it parks or PBOT or anything else. So if you don't have access to that meeting, I will make sure you get access to it. We'll get you the invite.
We don't have access to it.
We'll fix it. That's an easy fix.
And also too, the media needs to know it so they can get it out there too.
Fair enough. I will make sure that, well, here's what I'll do. I will get the meeting invite to whoever's in charge to make sure it gets disseminated.
Sure.
Perfect.
Char's
I'll make
in
sure you have
charge.
it.
Okay. When is the next meeting so they can begin to think about it and get it on their calendar?
It should be 2 weeks from, no, we did it last week, so it should be the next week.
Where's it at?
It's online. You don't have to go anywhere. We meet on Teams. Teams, it matters because some people have to install it, so I just want to make sure we're talking about the right program. All right, I've been ignoring him for the entire time I've been talking. Yes, sir.
Okay, I got a question. You know, drugs is a big deal, right? Then why in the heck are they allowing so many damn drug places? Every corner you go to, it's got a what do they call them?
Motorhome? Tent? Motorhome?
No. They sell the drugs, the marijuana and all this. Almost every corner you go to anymore, it's got, what's the mayor doing? What's he allowing this to be
With
happening?
respect to marijuana dispensaries,
Yeah,
I'll admit that marijuana dispensaries are pretty low on our list of the drugs we're worried about tearing our community apart.
yeah, but
The
you
primary
start out
concern
with,
is fentanyl and methamphetamine.
yeah, but then you start out with marijuana. You've got all these shops and you know doggone well that they're selling other than.
I vehemently dispute that. Right.
But Oregon has a drug culture, like, and it's so that is a reflection of the things, but it's also this city is rife. It's acceptable here, so that is definitely contributing to the drugs we see on the street. It's acceptable, you know, and you see that by how many pot shops there are, and so like this drugs are good culture. Does the mayor have any thoughts on sort of trying not to encourage drug use, like as a cultural phenomenon?
I don't think that it could be said that the mayor's office is doing anything to encourage drug use. I will point to the last time that the county made a decision about their harm reduction plans, and I would just point you to the mayor's response to those plans. Opposition.
Right.
Right. So I think that is kind of the best example of the mayor's position with respect to the drug problem that we see. And Measure 110, the mayor's office supports reform of Measure 110. Certainly want the money to flow to treatment. Absolutely. Nothing about our position wants to take away that push to making sure people get treatment. But what we're doing right now is not working. And not enough. Okay? Not enough. And what we're trying to do to fix that is hire more officers, work with our partners for the prosecutions and the arrests that need to be happening, all right? And really trying to just flex those muscles that, you know, we weren't flexing as much when Measure 110 first passed, and then COVID happened, and just all the mess that was there, right? So we are moving in a better direction. I'm not pretending
Downtown looks sketchy right now.
Asserting.
Well, am I going in a better direction?
Yes, undeniably, we are moving in a better direction. I will stand by that all night.
What I'm seeing is not the arrest, it's not the amount of police, it's there's no consequences. Somebody can go hold up 7-Eleven and they're out the next day.
Exactly.
And nothing happens to them. You need to change the laws for punishment.
So I just want
How
to
are you going to cure it with no consequences?
I just want to take a moment and make sure.
And I know these people got out. I've seen it on TV. They're out the next day. Like the guy downtown breaking windows. The next day he was out. How come there's no consequences? What has to be done to change that?
All right, so
New DA.
this is an opportunity for a little moment of where does the city fall on that spectrum? We're the enforcement part of this, right?
Yeah, you have nothing to do with the prosecution is what I'm talking about. There's no consequences for most people.
Fair enough, but I'm not in a
Drug
position
treatments are
responding for the DA.
drug treatments are not punishment for them.
And what are more cops going to
Can't
do? What are more cops going to do unless you have that prosecution, unless you have that accountability for the crimes, the vandalism, the fires, all of that? Unless you have that mechanism in place, it doesn't matter how many cops you have. There's nothing they can do.
I think it does matter. I think that the deterrent effect and knowing that you can't get away with things because they're right there.
But they can't get away with it, and they are.
I disagree that having more officers on the street is not going to send a message that the bad behavior is as acceptable as you're asserting that it is. And I'm hard pressed to push back that we've got a problem. But I'm also not in a position to be.
I'm not
speaking to the
saying
DA's
more
office.
cops is bad. I'm hoping that we get 5 times more than we have. 5 times. What I'm saying is if there is no consequences for bad behavior, you're going to continue to get bad behavior. And there's no consequences for bad behavior unless there's prosecutions or other, forced into mental health facilities, drug addiction counselors, etc. Unless there's accountability for bad behavior, we're going to continue to have bad behavior.
I do not fundamentally disagree with anything you're saying. I just can't speak for the DA's office or the sheriff's office with respect to their policy and funding decisions for those other portions of the continuum that you're referencing. I don't think you're necessarily off base, but that's not who I represent, so I'm not going to step out of line here. Were you raising your hand?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know if you were pointing at something.
I think a lot of times in this area, we are so close to the Clackamas County border, and Flavel MAX station is a good example of that. It harbors a lot of drug addicts, sex shops, open air sex acts going on right at the very entrance where our children, our young people, our neighbors have to go and catch the bus, or the bus stop actually is right there. What I'm saying is the police are more involved in central southeast, and I see a lot of activity coming right along the Clackamas County border, and I can say that because I have a friend that lives on one side of Clackamas, which is Clackamas County, and one side that's Multnomah, and the amount of activity going across the street, and then the sheriff's office and Multnomah County argues about whose jurisdiction it is. It's not just that, it's that I think a lot of the crime comes right up against this line because they know that the majority of the offices are in another area of town. And they just don't come around as often unless there's gunshots. And we've been told when we hear gunshots, and I can tell, I could probably speak to everyone in here has heard gunshots from 10 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning. We're hearing racing cars, people running through our neighborhoods, and as soon as you allow that element to stay, which has been there for 7-8 years, you can attest to that. We see the infiltration into our neighborhoods and stealing, coming into our yards. But what I'm saying is they just don't come out this way that often because they're more involved in southeast, inner southeast. So I think sometimes unless we call, then we get action. But I'm with Todd, there's no consequence to their behavior, and our children have to watch this day in and day out, and they just think that it's normal, and this is not normal.
It's not normal.
And I don't want it to become normal for this area, but it kind of is. People kind of have accepted, and they talk about Lent in a negative way. And we have beautiful people here. They're low income. They don't all speak the same language, but they don't feel like they have a voice, and they're afraid to speak up. I have neighbors that wanted to come here tonight, but they're afraid. They're professionals, they have jobs, and they're afraid of retaliation. And it's just, this is the element that we deal with quite a bit. I think that border, being on the border here kind of contributes a little bit to it.
And the bike paths.
The bike path is huge.
Yeah, that Foster floodplain area.
It's
just
really
got so much camping in there because nobody's going to see from the path. And then the other problem with that is like, in terms of using the path, like for kids riding their bikes, which is not, nobody that I know allows their kid to do that, but is when you're on that path, there's fences on either side. And so you don't really have any room if somebody jumps you, which happens a lot, like you are kind of stuck. It's really scary. And so they're almost like just they've been abandoned to crime. Like what, is the city like not aware of that? They're just like zones of criminality. Like most decent people that are not decent, but like most people who are not living there refuse to go there.
So the part of this is that I have to ask you for help with is the reporting. Because that is how we know about those camps. And someone was talking about calling camps in. You don't have to do that. You can go to PDX Reporter and do it online. So you don't have to wait on the phone to report a campsite that's a problem, okay?
But what I'm saying is nobody's going there. So we just
report
know
on
the last time I went there, I got jumped.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have a dashboard of the hundreds of camp abatements that are happening every week. So I will absolutely follow, and this is actually a great segue because Sky can talk more about the details of our homelessness policy. So I'll hand it over here in just a moment. But with respect to the reporting fatigue is real, and I do not want to minimize how much you've been bearing by reporting over and over and over again, and it not being enough. But we need that. Please continue to do so. And with respect to you're not being heard, I really hope to remedy that with the problem solver meeting. I want you to have access. The whole point of it is that you get to show up every 2 weeks and have very much this meeting about what we did or did not get done for you. So we can get a much more regular cadence, is what I'm trying to say, on addressing some of these concerns. We could talk for hours, and we will certainly set up a time every 2 weeks for an hour to make sure that that happens. But in the interest of everyone's schedules, I'm going to hand it over, okay? And I'll make sure I get the problem solver invite out to the community.
So Sky Bruckernau, nice to meet you all. So I do homelessness and behavioral health policy. So we've touched on a lot of those pieces tonight. I'll just quickly, just for sake of everyone's knowledge of the reporting that Dakotah was talking about. So the impact reduction program, I help run it. So we are doing probably 80 to 100 camp removals a week. But you probably all know that you have to post for 72 hours. We have to give notice by state law. And then if folks set up again, I have to give another 72 hours. So I have to go determine which camps across the city, anywhere, we post that week and what we can get to and then what we can remove. So we want, please, for you to report the camps because it goes into our database. And you can see that dashboard online. We can also send that with the meeting invite maybe. Because you can actually just click on a dot and see if it's been reported, when it was cleaned last. How long that took, the pictures of the site before and after. So you can get a lot of that information and see how much we're removing and how much trash we're removing, and you can really keep tabs on kind of what's going on that dashboard online.
Can you define camp?
Yes.
I'm dealing with a 53.
Is that a camp?
So if it has wheels, then it goes to Piedmont, which is another issue. Absolutely. So the camp removals for the non-vehicles is actually a lot easier for me to do. Vehicles fall under even more state laws and more legal settlements that I'm under. So, sorry, I'm a lawyer, so it's like I'm trying to weave my way through a ton of different legal settlements. But the vehicles, we still have to post them and remove them, but that team is smaller. So we're trying to beef that up. I actually worked with Dakotah recently to make sure that we had more folks who are able to post vehicles and tag them. But a lot of what you see too is, which I'm sure you all have seen on like Craigslist, people just give away free RVs because it's actually more cost effective than destroying it, which like Metro charges you fees to destroy the RVs. So actually one thing I want to do with the legislature is figure out a better way to get rid of RVs, because we're just seeing folks take free RVs from Craigslist, and it's frankly very frustrating. I tow hundreds and hundreds of RVs, and it costs the city a ton of money to tow every time. And then they just keep popping up. And we want to find better places for folks. RVs are not a habitable place for folks to live long term. We see a lot of RVs that are broken down, rats are getting in, it's just really gross. So I think we can all agree that we should not have folks living on the streets in RVs long term. But there's a lot of answers to that question, because the vehicles are just a whole other can of worms, unfortunately. Yeah.
When a camp is cleared, what happens to the people that were living there?
Yeah, so before camp is posted even, we send out outreach crews. So we work with, I work with the county, a lot of nonprofits, and then we also have our own outreach team. So it's hundreds of different outreach workers across the city from different nonprofit groups, go out, offer different resources, and then we post, so folks have 72 hours notice. It also has 211 as like a number that folks can call on that pamphlet. And then we will store their property for as long as they need, and we offer services again when we come back. So it's kind of a multi-tiered process. Yeah.
How come Portland is so welcoming all these people? I mean, I talked to a fella out of Florida, okay? I said, how come you came out here? He says, they paid me $100 and a ticket to come to Portland. Why is the mayor allowing that?
I can't stop people at the border of Portland from coming in. I would say we definitely have other cities that see us as a prime area.
Don't be giving them everything.
Again, with the legal settlements, I am under a lot of rules. And I want people to be successful, but also we have that program too. It's called Ticket Home. So you can go home and we will buy your ticket home if you have family in a different state and you want to get back to family. So I think honestly most cities have programs like that. But what we're trying to do is create better pathways. So in the end of July, I opened a 140 pod shelter system that has wraparound services to get people from the streets directly into that shelter setting and then into housing. So we're trying to build kind of a process for folks so they aren't camping on the streets, so they actually have someone managing them.
You say, well, here, I'll give you this pod, you can live in it. No, I don't want to live in that. I got to go by all their rules. I don't want to go by rules. I want the money, but I don't want to go by their rules.
Right, and I think during COVID, actually, that feeling was proliferated because we had a shelter-in-place order. So folks really were stabilized kind of in those camps, and now we're starting to really show. I mean, if I'm doing 80 to 100 camp removals a week, like folks are getting moved around. It's annoying. Like we're being annoying. We're annoying them with resources and outreach, but we're annoying them. And I think we also are. We passed a time, place, manner ordinance in July. City Council did, and so we're going to be instituting some enforcement mechanisms for reasonable time, place, and manner. You know, you can't camp between 8 a.m., 8 p.m. It's going to take us, obviously, a while to fully enforce that. There's a lot of folks around the city, but we're really trying to bring back those kind of rules and reasonable regulations that I think were lost a little bit during COVID. Yeah.
So, I know Peabody gets the RVs and all that, so we have a lot of tents and that on Southeast Nap. In fact, they're on city property. They're on Indian Creek. That's where they have the city has gotten a park in there, and it just irritates me because they are ruining all of that beautiful area. And they were asked to leave and left, but there was one person that was there, like it was holding, and it was 4 hours later, they're back, and they've been back, and there's barriers, and they've gone over the barriers, and they've got dogs, they've got kids, it's just a mess. And then over on the north side of Knapp, it's just bumper to bumper to bumper to bumper to bumper. There's trucks, there's boats, there's trailers, it's a mess. It's just a mess, and you can't go down Knapp because sometimes they're on both sides. It's a hazard. And ProLogic has a fence there. They have torn down that fence, and I've been told that they're not going to put money in to put up the fence. I've lived here 71 years, and it's just a mess. We went on a trip, and we went to Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and all of that, and they'd say, "Where are you from?" We say, "Portland." They go, "Sorry."
It's really embarrassing.
So it's just a mess. Just a mess on that. If you want to go by and see, just go from 92nd over on Knapp, and it's awful.
Yeah, no, I have it on my list, but the Peabot ones are about 2.5 months out is my schedule right now. So.
Well, I saw green tags on a lot of them, but then they took them off. But then, now the camp today, I don't know, there's a green tag on a tree. Is that?
Yeah, it's because there's a camp in the vicinity, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we have to put it up somewhere. Legally, we're required to put it up, at least in the vicinity of, so people know, they have to have notice.
I think the other part in connection with this is when you put the ban that no camping, people are coming from the street now and they're infiltrating like the off 205 in those green spaces where again, Peabot, ODOT, TriMet, they can't come together on it. And I've reported a truck that came up and totally took down the fence. They cut the fence, they backed their trailer in, they dumped metal and wood, and I took pictures, I reported it, and now there's a huge encampment that's off of the freeway. They come and go up and down the freeway, in and out, and they are just trashing the area back there again. And so they don't camp, if they're not on the sidewalk, they just go over the freeway on the other side until you move them.
Right.
And then they come back.
They play that game of going across the property line. Yep.
They're off of Tenino right now, back behind 205, and they come in and infiltrate the neighborhoods at night, stealing.
Yeah, and so we do work with, and I think you mentioned earlier, but we do work with TriMet and ODOT. We actually work with ODOT really closely. The problem with ODOT property is that, and I think it's kind of been in the news, Senator Johnson will understand this, is we don't have enough money from the legislature to clean our property. So we only get to pick like 3 properties every few weeks that we get to clean on ODOT property. So it's like, all right, worst of the worst, let's go. That's the only money we have from the legislature for that. So that actually just creates a huge issue, which I would say, please let your state rep know that we need ODOT money because I can't clean if I don't have the money for it. But I will keep cleaning the city properties because I do have money for that. So that's what we keep trying to do, but we want to make that, we meet every week with TriMet. We meet at like multiple times a week with ODOT. And so we try to do those like collaborative efforts. I would say definitely like the problem solver meetings are perfect for like this, like Knapp Street. There are vehicles on both sides you can't get through. I've already reported it. It's on your list, but you need to raise it to the top of the list because like this, and this are happening. That's helpful for us to know because we're just triaging different places right now. So I need to know what's the worst of the worst.
I'm surprised they don't know my name.
They probably do.
I'm going to use you guys as a target of opportunity because it's easier to get to you now than it is to try to call you. One of the things that's been particularly annoying to me is that there's no parking for the central precinct for PPD. Those guys have to park on this side of the river. They have to walk across in all kinds of weather to get to central precinct. And with all the vacant space that's downtown, can I add to your list of to-dos? Can you find out how they can park near their precinct? This is Portland Police. The other precincts, I think, have the opportunity to park nearby. I think you've got an equity problem, and if somebody wanted to get real pissy about it, they probably could. But it annoys me that those guys that are being called upon to deal with the stuff that goes on downtown are so disrespected that they have to walk in the dark and the cold to get to work. So I make that request from Betsy. The other thing is, will you take up with the mayor whether or not the mayor would come down and testify for reform of ballot measure 110 and testify for additional money for you guys to clean up the graffiti? It's getting so bad now that it's a safety hazard. If you're driving here and you're unfamiliar with Portland and the signs are all painted over, it's starting to be a giant hazard, and the more we let people get away with it, the worse it's going to get.
Agreed.
Cool, all right.
Overwhelmingly agreed. So I'm just gonna throw somebody under the bus. That's more funding that needs to go to ODOT because they have already cleared their budget for graffiti on their signs because they were cleaning. They were just trying to keep up, and they do not have enough money to keep up. So we got to help them get that additional funds.
Okay, and now I'm going to speak to you guys. You need a new DA, and that will be a starting point, and I submit to you the new DA is Nathan Vasquez. He's a real DA, while DA Schmidt is thinking about going to Lisbon and drinking sangria and talking about drugs 6,000 miles from here. Nathan just won a triple murder case on day before yesterday. He's actually been in a courtroom. I don't know that Mr. Schmidt can say that. So you need a new DA. The other thing is that you need to work on your legislators. Dembro and ConFam are two of the problems, and you need to get to them. You need to see, Dembro's not running again, but I think ConFam is running Elizabeth for his seat. So you guys have got to go to town halls, and you have got to say, what are you going to do about this? You're my representative in the legislature. Will you testify for more money for graffiti cleanup? And will you support the reform of ballot measure 110? Because it is some of the very progressive downtown legislators that are going to be the problem with getting a reform for ballot measure 110 done statutorily rather than having to go to the ballot. So find out when those town halls are, show up, and bug the hell out of them.
And ask for ODOT money, please.
I have a question. How are you collaborating with Multnomah County, which is the county which we're all a part of out here, with the cleanup project? Because at one time, Portland had said they were not going to help the homeless with house sleeping bags, blah, 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 all that stuff. But on the other hand, Multnomah County was still doing it. Yes. And so they were still receiving the services. So together, you two agencies need to work. We're paying our hard-earned dollars for you guys together to solve this problem. The other thing I have to say is pods, fine, build the pods for them to come, but why should I have to continue to accommodate and pay for something that I'm pretty much aware of? Most all of them receive some kind of an income of some sort, not a lot, but they have some income coming in. That's how they're getting all their drugs, that's how they're getting all their other things. Additionally, as to theft and all that other stuff. And why can't we charge them for the services that we provide for them?
Well, we pay for their garbage, we pay for everything, but nobody pays for our stuff, but yet we have to live with being terrorized.
Yeah.
This is a tough town for being like middle class or lower middle class. It's really tough because you're taxed a lot. Property tax, income tax, or Oregon income tax is a flat tax essentially. You pay that 9% even if you make like $20,000 a year. And so in this neighborhood, people feel like they are paying more taxes because they're paying a bigger percentage of their income in tax. It's just how the taxes work here. So that's why it's on their mind, because it's like we have to pay for stuff, and our taxes, and then what do we really get here in Lights for that? I mean, we can take you on a little driving tour. You can see it right there.
And that's old. Yeah, those are old slides.
What do we get from the city here? Not much, but we certainly pay a lot.
I think, again,
like definitely report and go to the meetings and
Yeah,
tell us
we're-
exactly what you want us to clean up, because that's what we do.
I'm
So-
not exaggerating. These meetings, you just get to yell at me for a half hour.
We can do that.
And I will open up
The less
everyone.
it's done, the less taxes you're gonna earn, because somebody's gonna move out again, and then you're gonna have another vacant spot that you're not gaining any income because you're not getting any taxes.
Well,
And so it's a cycle out here that is not good for the homeowner or the city, and we need
Or
to
the
come
homeless.
to an agreement to rectify it.
Yes, and I think that's why we're trying to get folks on a better path, so they actually are earning that income, we're connecting them with jobs. One of those jobs is Clean Start, which is through Central City Concern, literally folks who are picking up trash. Like, that's one of our biggest employers for folks that we're engaging with on the streets. And so I think we are trying to connect them with those programs, so they're actually helping clean up the city, and getting on a better path, so they can become tax-paying citizens who are actually living in a home, and we're not having to pay necessarily for their shelter or their services.
I'm gonna cut her off because I've got a babysitter and I've got to get back to that babysitter. But I'm 100% serious. Before I leave, I'm gonna send you an email.
Okay.
With just my contact info.
Okay.
Hound me until I get you the problem solver invite, and I expect to see everybody here so that we can follow up on what we clearly did not have enough time to talk about tonight.
I want to thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, Scott.
Hang in there, come on.
I know, yeah. Can you tell we're tired? We're like, how did I home yesterday?
We gotta go.
Guys, does anybody want to talk to the TriMet folks? Because they're willing to stick around a little bit longer if you've got specific TriMet stuff. We can do a little case management over in one of the corners if you didn't get a question answered by the TriMet folks that said.
Anybody who wants to talk to me, I'll be over there.
Sure, I'll come over there.
There's flowers over there in the bucket.
They know that. They know that. And that's why they're looking for it.